Hi, my name is Lucy Wilson. I'm your McLean County 4-H president and one of your national 4-H shooting sports ambassadors. And today I'm going to talk to you about archery. Archery is an Olympic sport that is over 5,000 years old and was originally a form of hunting. The first bow I want to tell you about today is the long bow. It was the first type of bow made and was made out of one piece of wood to be roughly the height of the user. It was also made to have one single curve throughout the bow, which even though this bow isn't strung, you can still see. The original draw weight of these bows is said to be around 80 to 110 pounds, which would launch arrows that were 3 feet long, when today's arrows are only about the length of your arm. Our next bow is the recurve, which was first recorded in the 8th century. It's very similar to the longbow, except for the limbs curve away from the archer at the top and the bottom. They do this to store more energy and to deliver energy more efficiently than a straight-limbed bow would. The draw weights today range from between 15 and 70 pounds. Now, what I have in my hand is called a traditional or a bare bow recurve, meaning there's nothing else on it, it's just the bow. This is what's called an Olympic recurve, which is different attachments that you can put on your bow to help you shooting. This one has a sight and a stabilizer. The sight just provides a constant aim point, and the stabilizer will just help when you shoot. It'll keep the bow from shaking as much. The compound was first developed in 1966 and uses a levering system of cables and pulleys to bend the limbs, which increases its mechanical advantage and allows it to hold more energy than any other bow. It also has what's called a let-off point, which means once you pull it back to a certain distance, all of the weight will let off and you won't be holding any of it, but the bow will still have the energy of whatever poundage you were pulling. The draw weight on compounds tends to range between 20 and 70 pounds. Lastly, the Genesis bow was developed in the early 2000s. It uses a cable and pulley system similar to the compound, but it's generally made for children and doesn't have a let-off point. The draw weight typically ranges between 5 and 20 pounds, and this is normally the bow that we'll start beginners on at archery practice. Okay, now I'm going to teach you the basic steps to shooting. First thing you need to do is make sure that your hair is tied back and that you don't have any necklaces or bracelets or dangling earrings to get caught up in the bow while you're shooting. Now you're going to get into a shooting position. You're going to stand up straight, perpendicular to the target, meaning that if you're right-handed, the target will be on your left side, and if you're left-handed, all of this will be mirrored and it will be on your right side. You're going to have your feet shoulder-width apart, straddling the firing line. Now you're going to nock your arrow. This little metal piece at the end of my arrow is called the nock, which I'm going to place on the nocking point, which is the spot right below the little metal piece on my string. Now, with the arrows, they have 3 fletchings, and one fletching is a different color than the rest. So when you nock it, you're going to make sure that the odd-colored fletching is facing out and away from the bow. And you also need to make sure that you have your index fingers above the arrow, and your other 2 fingers are below the arrow, and only the tips of your fingers touch the string. Because if you grip all the way down on the string, when you release, it'll roll off of your fingers and throw the arrow off of your aim. Now you're going to draw the bow. And when you draw the bow, you're going to have your finger up on top of the arrow with this type of rest so it doesn't fall like that. You're going to grip it, but don't squeeze it. You're going to draw back as you pull up to the target and not sky draw. Sky drawing is where you have the bow up above the target and then pull back. But if you do that and you accidentally release your arrow before you're ready, then there's no way to predict the path of the arrow. Whereas if you accidentally released it while you were coming up to the target, it would just harmlessly hit the ground. So, when you pull back, you're going to come to your anchor point, which is where my hand is touching my face. More specifically, I have my index finger in the corner of my mouth. I do this the same way every time, because as many components in this I can make the same, it'll be easier to adjust my shooting to hit the center of the target. Okay, so I'm shooting instinctively right now, which means there's no sights on my bow. So when I'm aiming, I'm going to look down my arrow and line the tip up with my aim point. My aim point is just a spot on the target or near the target, which I aim at so that I can hit the center of the target. Now if you have sights, then you'll just be making sure that you have the correct sight picture. And once you've aimed, you'll release the string by quickly relaxing your fingers. And again, making sure that only the tips of your fingers touch the string so that it doesn't roll. Now, once you release it, you're not quite done. You have to do what's called follow through, which is where you want to stand as still as a statue and keep the bow exactly where it was when you released until you hear the arrow hit the target. We do this because otherwise you might move just a little bit and it'll throw the arrow off and make it harder to adjust your aim. So, let me show you all of that from the beginning. I'm in my shooting position. I'm going to knock the arrow with the odd colored fletching out, my fingers on the string correctly, drawing up to the target, aiming, and then I'm releasing forward. If you found any of this interesting, you might consider coming to one of our practices. We usually practice on the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays of the month, with air rifle practices being on the other Tuesdays. And currently, we're on a break because of the COVID-19 restrictions, but if you go to our Facebook page, McLean County Archery and Air Rifle, then we'll keep you updated on when we come back to practice. I hope to see you there.